most organic way of doing
Yeah,
like a
I'm ready.
podcast.
I'm
So
ready.
I was looking on your website, but I want to hear from you. What was like the basis of your 800-gram challenge? Where did that come from? And
Mm.
what's like your selling point for it and the scientific backing? I'm very curious to know.
Yeah, I mean, maybe a quick primer. 800-gram challenge is to eat 800 grams by weight of the fruits and vegetables of your choice. And it includes things that people don't always classically think about as fruits and vegetables, such as potatoes, beans, corn. So it has a pretty wide strike zone: olives, avocado, and then, of course, things like broccoli and apples and all the other things that people would expect. So pretty wide base. And then in addition to those 800 grams by weight, again, of the fruits and veggies of your choice, you continue to eat whatever else you want. So you can still have your snacks, and you can still have your wine or your dark chocolate or whatever it is, but you have got this focus on eating enough fruits and veggies each day. So that's what it is. And the idea for it, I mean, without taking you through all the details, but essentially I was working on this idea of how do you measure quality in the diet, meaning when somebody says they eat clean, what does that really mean? And can we measure it? And this happened to be around the time I was wrapping up my master's in nutrition, and I came across a then new study that was looking at fruit and vegetable consumption relative to health outcomes, meaning, okay, we've got all these people eating fruits and vegetables. What happens to them in terms of death and disease? And it was a pretty cool study because it's a meta-analysis, meaning they pulled together research from lots of different studies. So they had 95 different studies. They had over like 200, 300,000 people that were pulled in from all over the world. So it wasn't just US, it included Asia, Europe. And what they found, no surprise, is that the 800-gram number was pretty significant. It's where the risk of cancer, cardiovascular disease, which are our two top killers, stroke, and all-cause mortality went down, or all causes of dying. So because I was playing with this idea of how do you measure quality, and then I happened to see that study, I was like, well, this is really interesting. What about if I try to eat 800 grams of fruits and vegetables in my diet each day and sort of see what happens? So this was summer 2017. And so that's kind of when the initial idea was born, but I played around with it for a while. I played around with it for at least 6 months because I wanted to see what it looked like in terms of volume. It turns out it's about 6 cups. I wanted to look at the calories. Turns out it's about 4 to 500. I want to look at fiber, micronutrients, all this stuff. I just wanted to really test it. I gave it to one of my friends. What do you think about it? That type of stuff. She was a CrossFitter, CrossFit gym owner. And then so in January 2018, I kind of launched it more publicly. And then, yeah, it's not perfect. It's no diet is, but it's a great way for people to add more quality to their diet, also often reduce quantity, i.e. calories, which most people need, in a really simple, non-dogmatic way. So it's a great kind of first step I give a lot of people.
So 800 grams. No, I'm happy that you said like 800 grams by weight and
Mm,
you added in like the 6 cups per day and like the
hmm.
amount of calories involved. Is
Yeah.
there like some of the folks that you work with, is there any sort of like limiting belief system that they have coming into it when they
Hmm.
might say something like, oh my gosh, that's so much food, or I don't need that much sugar? And
Yeah.
like by sugar, we mean like, fructose is actually very healthy, high in fiber, nutrient dense. Fructose is different from high fructose corn syrup. So what can you
Yeah.
speak to the day to day that you see?
Yeah, you've nailed it. You've nailed it. I mean, yeah, people think it's too much food. And I like to, and it's too much sugar, or too many carbohydrates, or too many calories, or all of that stuff. And just to kind of push back on some of those, like one of the things that I really love about the 800-gram challenge is it wasn't this wacky idea that I did and told other people they should follow it. It's an evidence-based number that I then brought and made it into a diet. Now, the researchers, they weren't trying to do a diet plan. They were looking at risk reduction. But it wasn't this thing that was like, oh, I'm going to do some weird restrictive diet and now everybody has to follow me. It's like, no, these are hundreds of thousands of people living and practicing this without even really knowing it was a diet. So it's already been proven that it can be done. And clearly across that type of sample size, it's they weren't all like, I'm 6 feet tall. They weren't all like 6 foot CrossFitters. They're clearly just like regular people, mildly active, somewhat active, like proving that this number is doable. So that's one of my big things that I really love about it. It wasn't like this harebrained idea I had. People were already doing it and showing that it was quite possible. And then, yeah, the caloric load is a fraction, all that stuff. But to get to your points, beyond that, it's too much food. Yeah, they worry it's too many carbohydrates. They worry it's too much sugar. And there's tons of research, not just the study that I pointed to, that points out that people are better off when they have more whole foods in their diet than not. And we can always point to more studies. I tend to not go that route, especially more in conversations with people, because there's a study to say anything, and if people aren't savvy in the literature, it's kind of like a he said, she said. So I like to do what I call kind of reality checks in the sense of, okay, so fruit has too much sugar. Well, where is it? I mean, it's not at the checkouts at grocery stores. It's not at gas stations. It's not at drugstores. It's not at the checkout at Marshall's, Home Goods, Michael's. It's not at the bank. It's not at the movie theaters. Where is it? We're overeating it. Where is it? So it's just sort of this reality check of like, if that's so harming, then where is it? Even the same thing with potatoes. Like we're all over eating baked potatoes. Where? Please, where? Besides Outback Steakhouse, I'm not really sure where we're getting all these baked potatoes. So, it's stuff like that to kind of put it in reality for people that they've just gotten caught into all this viral social media stuff. And to be honest, like I was stuck in that stuff for a long time too. It's one of the reasons why I'm got this real like reality check to my nutrition, because I didn't eat a banana for years. I would carry salad dressing internationally so that I didn't get exposed to what I thought was harmful, all this silly stuff. And so now I'm like, yeah, that's just total BS. So I try to push back a little with a little bit of humor, a little bit of reality check, and bring people back to earth.
No, I think that's a very healthy way of doing it too. And it's tough because with the amount of people I speak with who are in the scientific community, for us, it's almost like a double-edged sword of
Mm,
like, okay, like we were almost raised, so to speak, to question everything, dive into the research, be our own scientists and our own advocates. But on the opposite end of things, we do see so much either well-meaning or ill-meaning, junk, so to speak, on social
mm,
media, especially when people say something along the lines of like, oh my gosh, like we need to ban heavy metals and we need to ban chemicals. And it's like, well, banning chemicals, we're made up of chemical bonds. We're made up of covalent bonds, carbon. We are organic beings. And people are like, and it's like, okay, we're not going to ban chemicals and heavy metals. Like, let's just say iron, for example. Like, iron helps us with oxygen and carbon dioxide distribution within our blood. Like, we need iron, or you'd be iron deficient. So people just don't understand. But I think like that humor piece is so like necessary, and even
mm,
the 800 grams of just saying like, okay, like this is a very science-backed number and something which isn't really difficult to do if you just kind of distribute that throughout the day.
mm-hmm,
It's an easy thing to do. And
mm,
I'm sure you've dug into this as well with respect to like the micronutrients that
mm-hmm,
like I tell my students, I'm like, vitamin C is like one of the most important vitamins because it helps every other nutrient become much more bioavailable. So
mm-hmm,
every time you sit down, you should have a fruit and or a vegetable to
mm.
increase the bioavailability of whatever you're eating. And I love the banana example that you said too about how people push back on bananas because people aren't getting heart attacks because of bananas. Like, please
No,
show me the ERs with, lines waiting around the corner. It's like, oh my God, I had too many
too
bananas
many
today.
bananas.
I'm
Yeah,
having a stroke.
yeah. I did a social media kind of like an onion type of headlines. I don't do as many currently just because I haven't come up with them, but breaking news, woman eats two bananas at breakfast and still alive. And it's one of my most popular posts because yeah, I mean it's just like the people have gotten, and again, I was there. So I have empathy for the fact that it's so easy to get sucked. I mean, I was there after a first master's degree, not in nutrition and a biochemical undergrad. So I mean, like I got swept away in this false science as well, because you see these people with MD, PhD in their field. And so you just sort of take them, you give them all of this trust, and then you're like, oh my God, you get sort of sucked in this craziness. But yeah, so I like providing that reality check humor. It's certainly what I needed 10 years ago. Yeah, well, I guess 15 years ago, probably now.
Yeah, there's I have someone very close to me in my life, and it kind of like bothers me that it's like they follow someone online who's a lot more well known than I am, who
Mm,
has an MD after their name, and this
mm,
person says that like broccoli stalks are killing us.
mm.
That they're
Might
like
be,
a
what's his name? The carnivore guy.
yeah, that whatever. I literally forget his name, but like I know the person in my life, and they're
Mm,
like, "Oh, like Mike, don't be eating those broccoli
mm.
stalks. They're like a carcinogen." I'm like, "No, like smoking cigarettes is really bad for you.
Right.
Eating broccoli is good for you."
Yeah. Yeah. It's tough. It's tough. I mean, I don't really talk about nutrition in my personal life, which might sound a bit at odds, but nutrition, like I think you kind of mentioned before we kicked off the call, there is a little bit of almost like a politic level to it that until people are interested in hearing, they will not hear. And so it's until people ask me, what do you think about nutrition, or what do you think about this diet choice? And they're asking me directly, then I will address it. But, friends, family, stuff I'll hear just out at gyms and stuff like that, I do not get involved in nutrition discussions. Wait until asked. Wait until asked. Yeah.
So what is that like within the fitness community for you? Because like this is like this huge company that you've built and it's wonderful and I
Mm,
like that you have that dividing line because I have the exact same thing. my
Yeah.
students will ask me, oh, but doctor, actually, what do you eat? And I'm like, no, no,
Right.
no, no, no.
I
I'm not
know.
going to tell
Yeah.
you what I eat because you're going to give me that little finger
Right.
wag. So, I mean, how do you bridge that? Because you're largely also performance based.
Yeah, I mean, I have a podcast, I have social media, I have a website. My assumption is that if they are coming to those sources, that they've opted in to listen. And so, of course, I offer my opinion there. But it's more kind of in my personal life where, I'll hear stuff all the time. And it's again, if they want to ask me my opinion, I'm happy to discuss it, and that's great. But I just don't insert myself in nutrition conversations. It's sort of like inserting yourself in political discussions. If you really want to do it, go for it, but it might be a while. So I don't really find it's that hard because, again, I have sources where, people are opting into the content. If they're opting into the content, that means they're open to listening. It's an entirely different conversation than just sort of like somebody in your family saying, well, I'm doing keto because I think it's the best thing ever. And you're just sort of like, okay, let me know how it goes. And to be honest, like, it's quite easy because, again, until they're interested in listening, you're not going to make any headway anyway. And I sometimes, when people want to do carnivore or keto, it's almost like, I mean, it's going to sound, I guess, maybe a little poor, but I say, like, I sort of let them run into the wall because it's after they realize that that is not sustainable, then they're more interested in what you're going to say. If you try to do it out of the gates, like, no, 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 keto's not sustainable and you're not going to be able to do it and you're going to hate it and it's only going to work for 3 weeks. I mean, it's just almost worthless. It's almost like get it out of their system. And then when they're really ready for sustainable nutrition, great, I'm here.
How do you how do you approach that? Like when someone comes to you with that, do you add that?
Mm,
Like, I mean, since they're coming to you, do you add that little bit of like scientific touch and a little bit of guidance,
mm.
even though like they're just trying to get vindicated, almost so to speak, of be like, oh, you agree with me, right? Like I can totally do this whole bacon diet thing. And you're like, okay, well, there's this thing called LDL cholesterol.
Yeah. Well, a lot of times when people are coming to me, it's because they're coming to me after seeing social media or a podcast or something like that. So I have a feeling they're generally kind of, I don't know, aware of what my opinion is going to be. I talk a lot about sustainability. I talk a lot about real world nutrition. I talk about not being dogmatic about nutrition. So I think a lot of my customers are kind of already looking for that, right? They've already been through what I call like the washing machine cycles, as I was through all these different diets that really don't do anything, right? So I think from that perspective, they kind of expect that. Now, I do some one-on-one work, not as much maybe as what might be assumed to be for a nutritionist. But yeah, I kind of spell out in the beginning. It's just sort of like, yeah, we're going to look at fruits and veggies. We're going to look at protein. We're going to look at total calories. I don't really care which ones you pick. We're just going to kind of align some principles. And I also get a good sense if they're on board. I think that's something that's good for a nutritionist to do. It's not just the client potentially screening you for your credentials, you're screening them for if they're a good fit for your program. Because, like, if somebody's really stoked on doing carnivore, I'm going to be like, okay, that's not what I do. I'm just going to tell them because, that's going to go its course within a week and it's not going to be good for either person. Right. So yeah, I'll be upfront with people about like my approach if they're coming to me for my services for sure. Because I ultimately, I want it to be good for both of us. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think for a professional to have that very mature standpoint is important because I think initially like a lot of people want to like get their viewpoints heard or maybe sell
Mm,
their product or get their name out there, but it's like if this isn't going to be beneficial for both parties, then why go through with that? And
totally.
people are going to go in with a preconceived notion of like it's either this or it's that, and like we know within fitness, we know within nutrition, things are rarely black and white. There's like a whole beautiful spectrum, shades of gray sort of thing going on. And we even
Totally.
started that off talking about like CrossFit. CrossFit, like I've never come from that community. I come from a running community, but um, there's no bad exercise. It's just exercise in general. Movement's
Hmm.
good, but there will be some things that work better for one person, work better for another.
Hmm.
And you
Hmm.
can kind of like, I guess, move those dials, so to speak, with your diet each day, given you are getting in enough micronutrients from your fruits and veggies.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, so my main message in nutrition is not actually the 800-gram challenge. My main message in nutrition are these 10 principles that I authored, and none of them are that, I don't know, revolutionary by themselves. They're like calories are a thing, macros help body comp, we need micronutrients, sustainability is important. Like they're pretty well accepted once you get to the peer reviewed literature. The problem with something like that is they don't really give people direction. If I have a client coming to me and they're like, "What should I eat?" And I'm like, "No, no, no. Let's learn the 10 principles." It's sort of like understanding the methodology of something. And I think they're really useful. And I do teach a master class where I have people come through, and I think they really give people a roadmap and this underpinning to understanding nutrition. But not everybody wants that. You know what I mean? Like some people are like, "Just tell me what to eat. Just let me get started." And so I'm like, "No, no, no. Let's talk about metabolic adaptation. It's just not the right, clientele, and they're not in the right frame of mind for it." So the 800-gram challenge becomes how I start to put those principles into action. Is it perfect? No. Is it perfect for all clients? No. But, 90% of Americans aren't eating enough fruits and vegetables. 74% of Americans are overweight or obese. So doing something where we emphasize a little bit more quality and potentially decrease quantity in a way that's sustainable, non-dogmatic, non-restrictive, it's like, okay, this is a great place to start with a ton of people. So yeah, I mean, it's a really long answer to kind of your point of, it's like, yeah, I think there's lots of shades of gray in nutrition. And I think people can be even healthy without the 800-gram challenge, evidenced by the fact that millions of people don't even know it exists. But nevertheless, it's one of the ways that I can help people getting after some of these underlying concepts when they might not have the scientific understanding or patience to kind of sit through that. Like a music teacher, an accountant, like they just need to eat healthy or maybe help out their family eat healthy. They don't necessarily need to explain all the PubMed ID numbers, right?
Do you think that, and I always go back and forth on this, do you think that in general, people know what foods are healthy or
Mm,
nutrient dense? And people also conversely know what foods are more calorie dense and a little bit more unhealthy and shouldn't be eaten in high enough, you know, proportions? And do you think people just don't care about that? Or do
mm,
you think there's also a ton of contraindications with respect to food deserts, money, availability, palatability, that sort of thing too? Because I feel like in
yeah.
general, people know that apples are nutrient dense, but like, why are people not eating more apples?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, that's a huge question. And I think some of the socioeconomic stuff I'm going to just sidestep because it's almost too complicated for, like, let's say my clientele base, which is going to be coming off of Instagram. Like, it's just not people who are facing those same challenges. And I think that's an entirely, needs to be dealt with in that way. I would say for a lot of the mainstream America, I think you're correct. They know apples are better than McDonald's. What's interesting though, there's also these other niches on Instagram land. And again, it's kind of where I came out of, where everything starts to be unhealthy. You develop these really weird neuroses. You start to become afraid of apples because of the sugar. You start to become afraid of seed oils because of the quote inflammation. You become afraid of, I mean, there are so many things. I wasn't eating tomatoes at a certain point because of nightshades. I wasn't eating corn because it was a grain. I wasn't eating bananas because of the sugar. It's just like you start to develop these neuroses. And I'm going to tell you that within the greater CrossFit community, which I know you said you aren't as familiar with, there's a lot of people there. This disordered eating. That's kind of this offshoot of what was healthy. You know what I mean? Like they start down this path of knowing that whole foods are more healthy, but then they become like disordered within that realm. So I don't know. That probably wasn't the answer you wanted, but it's sort of like, I think if you were to take a poll on average, people are going to say apples are more healthy than McDonald's food. But then you do also have these people that within healthy fear, they've also become like their own kind of offshoot that I also help people away from that they really truly have begun to believe these lies, neuroses that are also a disservice to their overall health.
No, I think that's a very fair answer that you just gave, because I think that there are special situations where, yeah, socioeconomic status is a big thing, but it's not something that all of us can just, solve. And I would love to, but like I'm not in
Right.
politics, and then I'm not involved in that world. But it's funny though, because on that topic of like, okay, exercise and eating nutrient dense foods is good, but then it kind of funnels into this like over obsession. And it's one of those things that I've never really had to breach. And I know like a lot of my friends who have been like who are registered dietitians, they work maybe in hospitals or clinical settings, and they deal with folks who have addictions to some things, or they're clinically malnourished for one reason or another from over or under consumption. And that to me is bananas. And it's like, it's funny because when I first got into the nutrition space when I was like 15, and I was like, reading bodybuilding.com forums and livestrong.com, and then I went to college and I started doing research, it was like, okay, I can implement this, this, and this. But there have been periods of time when I've become over obsessed with a couple
Hmm.
of different things. And
Hmm.
then I have to say, Mike, pull yourself out. It's okay. And I feel like it's almost like the people who aren't really getting a ton of exercise, they're not getting 7 to 9 hours of sleep, they don't have a ton of purpose, they're not
Hmm.
focusing on like stress reduction. those are the people who always question me about like seed oils. And it's like, don't go out and drink 2 or 3 nights a week and go, oh,
Right.
like are sunflower seeds bad? I'm like,
Right.
no, no, no. Like
Right. Yeah.
enough with the alcohol consumption.
Yeah.
Get to the gym once or twice a day.
Right.
So it's like we're sometimes people focus in on the wrong things. But
Totally.
when you're hearing the barking noise from people with MD, PhD after their name, it's like, who's to say whatever? And you might not have the time and the energy to go on PubMed or Google Scholar and just start reading like crazy.
Yeah, and that's why I do have a lot of empathy. Like I do like to bring some humor again. It's sort of what I needed. I needed the reality check X years ago. But again, there are a lot of credentialed people saying really poor information. So I do know how easy it is to be sucked into the stuff and be caught down all these different details. And that's a lot of my clientele. I typically work with, especially my master class, because it's billed as a master class. So people are coming who are, I would say, are self-described nutrition dorks, right? Which is great. I'm one of them. Very professional, very educated population, and they've often been caught up in this stuff that we can't be experts in everything, right? So, yeah, the social media or just media in general creates a lot of noise that doesn't have to be there, unfortunately.
What are, I guess, some things that maybe that you had once learned or you had once thought even like 10 or 15 years ago
Mm.
that now you're like, oh, like we've
Mm-hmm.
headed in the right direction? And I'll give you an example.
Yeah.
And I think this was well meaning. 10 years ago, BCAAs were all the rage
Mm.
in that we need to keep consuming branched chain amino acids to stimulate muscle protein synthesis. But now we're realizing that muscle protein synthesis only spikes maybe 3 to 6 times per day. There is going to be this leucine threshold. And if you just get in a complete protein source, you're going to be okay. But I
Mm-hmm.
learned something 10 years ago, which is a little bit different now. So for you,
Mm.
like what if, since you've been in this space, I mean, a bit longer than me, what are some of the early
Mm.
adoptions that you had? And now you're like, okay, maybe we can rethink that.
Thankfully, when I started nutrition, I had already done every stupid thing already. So thankfully, I haven't had to change most of what I've opined on about nutrition, because there were times when I believed that fruit had too much sugar, potatoes had too much carbs, grains were too inflammatory, whatever, seed oils were killing us. I called them vegetable oils at the time, but one and the same. People were eating too high carb relative to fat. Calories didn't matter. Oh God, you name it. I mean, you name anything that's like wrong in nutrition, I believed it and did it. Now, thankfully, again, then I happened to go get a degree kind of at the end of my own neuroses and beliefs. And so when I started opining about nutrition, I had this. There hasn't been much that I've kind of changed. And that doesn't mean I'm right on everything. It just sort of meant I came back or came more public with a really, I think, healthy skepticism. And I also have always had a skepticism in light of some of the exercise stuff too. Like everybody, the idea that everybody needs 1 gram per pound for muscle building. There are some people who do, and there's a lot of people who don't. I also have been a strong believer that like training is always going to supersede your protein intake. And thankfully, I'm starting to hear more of that chorus online as well. And maybe it's just I'm running into the right people now. Maybe I'm getting shown the right side of Instagram or whatever. But because I had been through such stupidity myself and done all these dumb things, I think when I started more posting publicly my opinions, I definitely tried to catch myself a lot and reality check my own self and was like, well, wait a minute, let's look at some other populations. Let's look at how this is playing out instead of just kind of following some idea that you've heard online and in giving almost like biology and the power of the human body like a lot of credit that it's going to work itself out better to a level than we probably understand.
Sure. And I think that there's something that can be said too about um, doing what is, sufficient
Mm,
for one person and what is maybe considered optimal. And
mm-hmm.
and I love that you brought up like the 1 gram per pound of body weight of protein because no, like you don't need that much for most people. Some athletes, if you're like, I don't know, personally, I eat about 4,000 calories a day because I'm
Yeah,
like
you're going
doing
to
a
be there. Of
ton
course.
of cardio and I'm lifting a ton of weights. And it's like, okay,
Of course you're going to be there. Yeah.
like I'm over it
You
because
have
I
to be
just eat
there.
because I eat so much food. But
Mm-hmm.
it's like for someone who's relatively sedentary and has this thing called balance in their life, no, you don't need that. So it's never going to
Yeah.
be a one size fits all approach.
Yeah, and I just had the 1 gram per pound is driving me nuts right now. In part because, as a nutritionist or nutrition coach, especially kind of in my niche, I get people who aren't yet at their goal weight, which means they're kind of struggling to hit their calorie need. Like you aren't going to be doing that because you have such a high caloric demand that you can pretty much eat whatever you want, and that's okay. But I don't get those clientele. So then you get these clientele, and now we have to also remember the statistic that 77% of Americans aren't meeting the CDC guidelines for exercise. They're trying to lose weight and they're eating 1 gram per pound of protein. It's like, what? Like where with protein comes calories. So it's such an obvious place to cut back, but it also turns out ends up giving them more freedom because they don't love all this protein stuff either. It's just been sort of pushed out there that, regardless, you have to eat 1 gram per pound. I'm like, you're not even doing the training volume to necessitate the protein. So sorry, that one just drives me absolutely nuts. And it's one of the first things I change with people. And it's like the training is so much more important than the protein intake.
No, I think you had posted something last week on Instagram, where you had said something along the lines of like protein still has calories. And if you're
Yeah.
like still over consuming protein, like you're still going to be over
Yeah.
consuming calories if you're not doing your homework and getting to the gym. And like, I love that because I don't know, when I was doing my PhD, like I came from a lab of dietitians
Mm.
and I learned a lot about dietetics. I did my
Yeah.
dissertation all on nutrition with sodium and potassium and triglycerides. And it was all like macronutrient and micronutrient focused. But then my first 20 something years coming up was all exercise science and performance. This was like, let's get big, strong, and jacked. And this was like, let's not eat because we want to be skinny. And I
Mm.
was like, how do I do this sort of thing? And it's like, I think you have a very healthy approach to that where you're saying, hey, like, I love this very strong, anaerobic, CrossFit community, but I also love like the nutrition side of things.
Mm.
And you can't cheat yourself.
Mm.
And there's like so many folks who, like, I'm sure come to you, come to me, come to so many other people who are in like this, the business of helping people who would be like, well, it's a healthy fat, right? And it's like, yeah, I mean,
Mm.
there are healthier fats, the unsaturated, and like maybe less healthy fats, like, the saturated fats. But if you're just going to be stuffing your face all day with like avocados and nuts and seeds and you want to lose body fat, you need to be in something called a caloric deficit and actually increase your body composition by lifting weights, increasing that
Mm-hmm.
metabolic rate, doing some cardiovascular exercise to keep your heart strong. And there's this disconnect of people want to like eat the cake, but like not burn it off. And it's like, it's tough. You can't make them do that, but you can just give them the tools along the way.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you've probably heard me say it, but like the longer I'm in nutrition, the more I think exercise is the nutrition hack. Um, and there actually was an interesting clip. I want to do a podcast about it. It's like this, the premise of which is more important, a healthy diet or exercise. And of course it's not, either. There's benefits to both. But it's really interesting. I mean, exercise is so powerful. And if you're within a healthy weight range, the details of the diet become even less important. And then if you exercise, it's like, wow, this is really, and I think there's so much to exercise beyond burning calories. I think it's stress, sleep. I think it's mental acuity. I think it's identifying as a healthy person. I think it's identity. I mean, there's just so much with exercise that, to be honest, a lot of times, I mean, I definitely put myself more in like the nutrition for fitness people, but I make it very clear to my clients, all of them. It's like my most successful clients exercise. And it's one of the reasons why I actually transitioned from CrossFit to nutrition. I mean, CrossFit's base of their pyramid is nutrition. They were always focused on nutrition. They always knew it was so important to outcomes. But yet, like, it's a fitness company, right? So it's sort of like the priority on exercise, I think, is pretty powerful.
Yeah, I don't know if it's still like kind of early to talk about, but people are talking about like the GLP-1 agonists.
Hmm. Hmm.
And I think that there's a huge scientific basis for that for those folks who need that.
Hmm. Hmm.
But like anything else on this planet, it will be abused as a drug.
Yeah.
Everything is abused as a drug, from watching TV to food to actual drugs, whatever. And it bothers me because some people online are like, this is the greatest thing ever. Like, you can lose weight
Mm.
and not have to exercise. And I'm like, oh, like,
Yeah. No, but you want the exercise.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm like, besides the heart being the most important muscle in the body, you had brought up like that holistic approach. And one thing that I've been on recently is the acute and the chronic increases in cognition and emotion of exercise. So it's like acutely when you have like, like the runner's high or any exercising high, it's like the endocannabinoids and the endorphins make you happier, make you feel more relaxed, decrease your blood pressure, just make you a better person, maybe make you focus better. But then like chronically, your brain derived neurotropic factor goes up significantly higher than anyone else.
Mm-hmm.
So I've let it known to everyone in my life that I'm like, hey, non-negotiable, I exercise twice a day. I do an hour of cardio and I do an
Mm-hmm.
hour of weights. It's like, do you have to? No. But like I've been able to deal with like the ebbs and flows of life so much better when I have the morning and the afternoon hour training session. I go, hey, I'm physiologically a happier person than you are because I just do more exercise. Might need to sleep a little bit more, might eat a little bit healthier, but in general, I need to fall back on my training, so to speak, to just be happier.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, yeah, exercise. I guess the exercise is the hack. The founder of CrossFit, Greg Glassman, always said the greatest adaptation to CrossFit's between the ears. And some of it's because CrossFit's sort of a challenging exercise regime, right? And so, but it is true. It doesn't really matter if it's CrossFit or not. There is that feeling of accomplishment. There is all these other lifestyle holistic things. Heck, the cognition, man, exercise, all exercise. And I really encourage, like with my clients, as much as I grew up kind of in CrossFit and stuff like that, all exercise is better than none. I don't care what it is. You want to walk, let's do it. You want to lift weights, let's do it. You want to lift more weights than you walk, let's do it. Like, again, the fight that we need to be having right now is not what's the best exercise approach, is to get people regularly exercising, but it is so powerful. And like you said, it's just so far reaching in so many different areas.
Yeah, absolutely. You need to make it more accessible to more people. What are lazy macros?
Mm. Well, you continue doing the 800-gram challenge. So you got that fruit and veggie thing going, and then you start focusing on protein. And my general target is zero point 0.7 grams per pound of current weight. And if you're, 25 pounds or more, you can use a target weight. And then you just focus on doing that. So now you're doing this fruit and veggie and protein thing, but you're still not worrying about the rest. And the idea is, again, we're going to keep an additive approach to the diet, not restrictive. We're going to try to get more quality in the diet, and we're just not going to worry about the details until we have those habits in place. I don't mind if people are up to 1 gram per pound, but I generally reserve that for people that are already lean, already higher training volume, or clearly advanced strength capacity, which is not most people, which is not me. And I've been working out 5 times a week since middle school, right? So it's like, you got to be pretty up there to really kind of necessitate a 1 gram per pound. Or I do also make the caveat, if you truly love it, like if you truly, truly love salmon and you just love cottage cheese and you just can't get enough, like fine enough. But for a lot of people, they're just, like we mentioned before, giving up calories there that they really could be spending on foods that they would enjoy. And so I just encourage people to kind of take a more, it's still a high. I mean, I'm sure, as you know, in the literature, 0.7 grams per pound is still high,
Yeah.
1.6 grams per kilogram. But nevertheless, compared to social media land, a more moderate approach to protein.
Yeah, for all those folks out there who are buying plain Greek yogurt in bulk.
Right. Yeah. If you really want 1 gram per pound, go ahead.
That's awesome. It almost like reminds me, and I'm not gonna like, group it together, but it reminds me of, it's an easy framework similar to something like Weight Watchers,
Mm-hmm.
where it's like I love that idea of a point system, and it seems like you're similar in that,
Mm-hmm.
of like you're focusing on the nutrient density first with like the fruits and the veggies, where I think for them it's like 0 points or something like
Points, yeah.
that. And it's like if you have that 800 grams, and then next we'll start to talk about the protein, and then next, like I think what you do, which works, is like it's, as you said, the additive approach, and in comparison with the subtractive approach is like, hey, if you have this goal, keep the goal in mind. But like if you're going out for your friend's birthday or your son's birthday or whatever, and you want to have a little bit of a cake, don't be a bummer to be around. Have a
Mm-hmm.
little bit. Don't gorge, but have a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And then the next day, don't, exercise like crazy. Just get back up on the horse and it's going to be okay.
Yeah. 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 I mean, there's so many reasons why I do this. Again, I had been through the washing machine of stupidity with my diet choices. So, but yeah, the additive approach is really powerful to people. I think on other diets where they might experience quick weight loss, quick in quotes, because we all know it's just the water weight, but nevertheless, on something like an 800-gram challenge and lazy macros approach, what I hear the most is like the mental freedom. They're like, this is so mentally freeing, which actually is a big win from a dieting perspective, because then once you get some buy-in and they like their diet, turns out you have to like the diet to stick to it. You actually might see some long-term results. So yeah, I mean, what's interesting though is I'm also setting them up for the third step, which is then my three pillars method. We start to look at calories, caloric control. And again, for a nutritionist, most people are coming to me because they're not at the body composition they want, which means we do need to finally get to that caloric deficit. That caloric deficit is going to be sustained only when we have whole foods in place. So we need the fruits and the veggies and the protein to make those caloric goals sustainable. So there's multiple reasons why I do it this way. An additive approach, mentally freeing. Let's get the quality. Let's start addressing quantity in a non-comprehensive and cumbersome way. But it also is going to set them up if they do have kind of leaning out body comp weight loss goals, because we got to control that hunger.
Has your approach sort of evolved over time,
Mm,
especially after like maybe 2020 when things were like a
mm,
lot more people working from home
mm,
and things being a lot more hybrid and remote, where I don't know, maybe people are a little less active day to day because they are at home. Maybe there's a little bit more of a food focus. Maybe they're working out of their kitchen. Has that needed to evolve in recent
mm.
years?
I've definitely gotten more refined. Instagram challenge, I guess, was launched 2018. I think Lazy Macros was 2019 because all of my CrossFitters were like, well, this is interesting. And actually, interesting enough, because I just resigned from CrossFit when I launched the 800 gram challenge. Most of the responses to the 800 gram challenge were not weight loss. They were my CrossFitters talking about better performance. Turns out those micronutrients are important, as you know, recovery, creating energy, immune system, Anyway, but most of them were like, oh, I'm hitting PRs in the gym and I'm recovering faster. And I'm like, yes, yes, I know. But anyway, a lot of them liked it, but they were still like, cool, what about protein? So that's how Lazy Macros came to be. So that must have been 2019, which is still pre-pandemic. At that point, I did teach I didn't teach macros, but I hadn't identified that my third step would just be calories. I would kind of teach people sort of a macros tracking, but be like, hey, look, you've got flexibility between carbs and fat. Don't worry about it. Assuming you eat this kind of level of protein that I've recommended, carbs and fat are going to fall in a fine enough ratio. But I hadn't really like solidified the name, and I hadn't really kind of also created my own app to track in the method that I wanted to. I don't know when that came to be, end of 2022. I don't think it was pandemic related. I think it was still just realizing what are the essential pieces here that people really have to focus on. I got clients because of the pandemic because calories were too high, for sure. But I don't think it was lifestyle related. I mean, you could argue that we had those issues pre-pandemic, right? I mean, maybe it's just a greater degree now because of a more sedentary work from home. But I think, even in the pre-pandemic time period, most of the clients, again, that are coming to me are because they're not at their body composition goals for fitness or for aesthetics. And so we were working on calories before. But yeah, I kind of came to that clarity, I guess, somewhere 2022-ish, to be like, hey, first step is fruit and veggies. Second step is protein. Third step, we're going to look at calories. We're not going to obsess about macro ratios, because once you hit my protein level, your carbs and fat are going to be in the 30s to 40s, which is fine enough for most people. And then we're going to keep it simple so you have this kind of flexibility instead of trying to hit these three macro numbers. So I don't know if that was totally your answer, but I don't think I was that influenced by the pandemic in terms of my methodology, although I certainly know people gained weight during the pandemic and probably had to address their eating more because of it. And so my method can work for that. Yeah.
No, because I was just curious because I mean I think like being a lifelong student and always iterating on an original idea is healthy. It helps something just
Mm-hmm.
be flexible and grow with the times. And I had heard something on a podcast recently that because people are doing more of like this video chat from like the different
Mm.
Zoom and Teams and Riverside, as many different things, that there was like this huge upswing in people getting like plastic surgery and stuff with their face because they're getting very self-conscious about how they look with their cheeks and yada yada
Wow.
yada and their skin tone. And I was like, like I wonder if we're almost heading into a society which is a little bit more aesthetic focused.
Mm.
I don't know, and like maybe gyms are filling up a little bit more. There's Ozempic, and there was the whole body positivity movement of like, oh, like just love yourself. And then as soon as Ozempic came around, now people are walking around like skeletons, and it's like, okay, like you guys were all lying. Everyone wanted to be thin the entire time. So like I think that things are always going to be ebbing and flowing and changing based on dietary preferences, exercise, drugs, things like that. But I was just
Mm.
curious to see like your population and how you focus on this, because it seems like you have science as your core, which is like
Mm-hmm.
the honest
Mm-hmm.
scientist in you, and it's like how do you bend and sway with the times to help everyone else?
No, it's a great question. My marketer is heavily interested in GLP-1s. And again, I'm like, I was part of CrossFit for such a long time that a lot of my communities like that functional fitness-ish. They might not be CrossFitters, but they're fitness adjacent. And I do think that that population doesn't, again, they probably are less of the big trends, maybe more of slanted disordered eating that I mentioned than necessarily kind of some of the other viral TikTok trends or something like that. Because they have that fitness base, they kind of inherently know that a better body composition is not just to look good, but it's also because they want more pull-ups or something. They want to be able to run faster. So it's a nice. I honestly, it's a good place to be nutrition wise. They're pretty steady in what they want. I think maybe I'm missing the mark, but yeah.
Are a lot of people getting into CrossFit maybe for
Mm.
that reason, or High Rocks now? I guess it's like a similar sort of
Yeah, I
thing.
mean, hierarchs is kind of a little bit different, but obviously there's some overlap. I would call it CrossFit adjacent, and I think there's just a lot of. I don't know. I don't think CrossFit per se, the organization is getting bigger, but people are always going into gyms. I think functional fitness is growing. I think things like high rocks are certainly growing. I don't know, the F45s and the whatever else is. It's a good market. I mean, I definitely see it at Globo gyms too. People will do more of like the strength circuit classes and stuff like that, which you can consider CrossFit influenced or CrossFit adjacent. So there's a plenty big clientele base there, across all those people. And again, I don't have necessarily diehard CrossFitters from 2006 in all of my classes. A lot of them are, fitness professionals, fitness adjacent, kind of like I mentioned, those different styles. And all of them have that sort of, again, when you have exercise as foundation, I feel like nutrition's almost an easier sell. It's an obvious, and they also already have that buy-in to there is some work for this outcome that I want. Like, as much as it sounds nice on social media that I'll just get this quick outcome or quick gimmick, if you have people that are already regular exercisers, I do think they sort of inherently know that what they want is at the end of consistency and some pain.
Yeah, and people want that to a certain extent. They want to be able to breathe that sigh of relief and say, "Hey, I worked really, really hard today."
It was interesting. So the number, when people come to me for weight loss, what I'm willing to tell them is a half pound a week, which of course is that, I don't know, sounds completely crazy when you see 1 to 2 pounds a week on social media. But if someone comes to me and they're like, I want to lose 10 pounds, I'm like, okay, we're talking about 20 weeks, which again, in social media land is like, how does this woman even get clients? But nevertheless, it's because we set habits, we do slow caloric deficits, we do this whole consistency thing, we do things that are going to hold up once you get to your goal weight, all of that stuff. I have clients that are like, that's so refreshing. In the screening call, they're like, thank God. So there is certainly a market of people that are. I mean, it was just like I was. I mean, you kind of become who you needed, I guess. It's just like I was. You get sick of all of these different stuff out there. Now, I actually didn't really need body composition or weight stuff. I was just so intrigued by, what's the secret to dieting and nutrition. And I kept doing all this silly stuff and never had the answer. And so there's a lot of people there that just kind of keep chasing their own tail. And they just want to know like what to do and what's evidence based. And so a lot of people, there is I think a big market. I don't know if it's as big as the other market, but I think there's a good number of people who are just ready for like the real thing, the real deal. At least I've found them in the last several years.
Well, I think that there's something relaxing almost
Mm,
in a way
mm,
of the process.
yeah.
It's almost like when you go to school and it doesn't matter how old you are, like when you have a syllabus and it goes,
Hmm.
okay, this is what we're doing this semester. It doesn't matter if you're in elementary, middle school, high school, college, grad, whatever it is. And you go, oh, like this is my roadmap for the next 14 weeks. And you're like, okay, a little checklist. And it's always nice to be able to kind of like check that thing off.
Yeah,
And when you
that's
have a
true.
professional who you can trust, who's going to not do it for you, but be like your friend and your coach along the way, allowing you to have that agency as you go to check it off, check it off, check it off. You go, huh, I start to build momentum. I build confidence. I redo my self identity as someone who can take advantage of this opportunity to better my own health for now and for the future.
Totally.
And I think there's something that can be said for that. And I always urge people, I'm not like, you don't have to, but like I always urge people to like run a marathon at some point because it's
Mm,
like, it's not as scary as you would think it is. It's like, okay, it might take you 3, 4, 5 hours. It's like, oh my God, that long. It's like, yeah, the race starts at 7, you're done by 11 or 12, and football
right.
starts at 1. And then
Right.
you
You'll
kick
be
your feet
okay.
up and you watch 3 games on Sunday and then you eat a bunch of pizza or something. And like, it's fine. But it's like
Yeah.
to know, wow, I ran 26 miles. It's like, that's going to stick with you for the rest of your life.
Totally.
And this is that beautiful process that
Mm,
when you find the people who are willing to take that journey, it's like, wow, like I never want to backslide. I just want to keep plussing
mm,
this, so to speak.
mm. Yeah, for sure.
What would you like to see change?
Hmm. Yeah, that's an easy one. The food environment. Um, I don't work in health policy. I don't work in that stuff. Partially because I don't know. It's going to take a lot. It's going to take a lot. So I'm sort of like, well, where can I make a change? I can work with individuals at the individual level, and I can help them get to where they want to be. Awesome. Maybe that's a defeatist attitude, but yeah, I mean, the food environment's killing us, crushing us. People talk about like the obesity epidemic and why it didn't exist and all this stuff. It's like, yeah, because that's what I said before. Anytime you go anywhere, you can eat Doritos, and Doritos are fine, but we just don't need that option all of the time everywhere. So I really think that until, and I've said this a bunch before, like I think it needs to be almost kind of regulated like smoking. Like, how did we make a big dent in smoking? We really cut down on where it was sold, and it's like, okay, in my opinion, I don't think if a place isn't like, these are just some ideas, I don't know if they're going to be perfect, but like if the place doesn't make most of its money off of the food, then they can't be selling the stuff. Like, again, I don't know why discount clothing stores or home goods stores need to sell me chocolate bars. Like, I just don't understand. Or when I go to Best Buy, like, why should I also have the option to buy peanut butter cups? It's just, I think there needs to be a big, and then even in grocery stores, it's like, doesn't need to be at all the checkouts. Like, make it more difficult for people to get, kind of again, like smoking, because we did actually make a difference in smoking. Now, maybe, I don't know, vaping, we could see what we're doing on that overall, but we did actually make a dent in smoking. And I think it's because there was regulations around its accessibility. And so we need to make the default decision or the easier decision a healthy one if we really want to see a population level change. Like, I can make differences on the individual level, and that's awesome and it's rewarding. But we're not making any progress when we look across the population.
Yeah, it's funny. I feel like every single time I do one of these podcasts, I always talk about Atomic Habits by James Clear. Like basically
Mm-hmm.
everyone's read that book because it's
Yeah.
one of the top 10 books ever.
Yeah.
He always talks about making good habits very easy and attractive and
Mm-hmm.
bad habits hard to do. And like I think the example that he put in his book is one that every single person should implement is like only fill your house with fruits and vegetables.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like have a no tolerance policy for like sweets in your house. Like
Mm.
make sweets something that you only have with friends and family at a restaurant or something you have to go out to do. And the amount of times that like I'm wrapping up at like midnight or 12:30 and I'm like, I'm a little bit stressed, I'm feeling a little bit snacky, and I'm like, huh, okay, there's a lot of different colorful fruits and veggies, and there's a bunch of protein shakes and Greek yogurt and salmon fillets. And I'm like, okay, I'll just have like an apple and go to bed.
Go to bed. Yeah.
And I'm like, thanks,
Yeah.
James Clear. You made that
Yeah.
really easy. And it's
I
like, yeah,
know. Yeah. Stephen Guyenet also talks about that in The Hungry Brain. It's so funny. You can learn all this stuff about the physiology, as you know, but when you get to application, it's some really, really simple practices. One of the things about the no sugar in the house, I don't like to demonize those foods, because I do also think, again, within my kind of niche audience, that people have become to fear, like, oh my gosh, I had birthday cake, I am now hurting my long-term health, when that's also not a reality. So I don't like to fear that stuff, but I do like to tell people, one of the phrases I said, like, if you binge it, don't buy it. Like, okay, you're going to eat the bag of Doritos in one sitting, don't buy Doritos. Maybe you can buy some rice cakes that you can kind of have as a snack when you're truly hungry and just want to enjoy them. But let's not buy the things that are those trigger foods for us, because it's one of the easiest things that you can do. Like you said, at midnight, are you really going to get in the car and go down to wherever to buy something? Probably not.
yeah. And it's funny. Like I remember being a kid, and when we go out to like a restaurant, and they'd ask like my parents like smoking or non-smoking section. And I remember asking my dad when I was like really little, I was like, hey, like, what do they mean by smoking and non-smoking? Because I can smell it either way.
Mm,
And he goes, yeah, you realize that you can smell it whether you're in a smoking section, non-smoking section, you're on the same roof. And then like they outlawed that. I don't know if it's in every state or maybe because I'm from like Philly. They outlawed it at least in like New Jersey, Pennsylvania, like when I was a little kid. I think, as you said, like smoking tobacco products has been down and alcohol consumption has been down across college campuses, which is
mm,
wonderful.
hmm.
And like I was happy that you said that as far as like how do we implement not having the ability to buy, you know, candy basically
Every minute.
anywhere and everywhere. And it's like one thing that I stress about when I go on like trips and vacation and work trips is like, how can I still eat a healthy diet, which is going to make me feel happy and healthy over this next week? And it's like, I'm always like ahead of time, I'm scouting out grocery stores. And I'm like, how can I buy like a big bag of fruit? How can I get some like protein in here? How can I get some complex carbohydrates? Obviously, I'll go out with friends and I'll enjoy a nice meal, but I'm just like, that's my biggest stress point is like I don't
Totally.
want to be at the whims of like, oh, like, you know, the other day we just went to Tampa to see the Eagles and the Bucks game, and we were out all day, and it's like at a certain point you eat at the game, and I had a soft pretzel and some
Right.
Diet Coke, and I was like, oh, it's not going to kill me, but I'm like, I
Is
would
there
have liked,
anything else? I
yeah, I would have
know.
liked to have something
Is there
healthy,
any
but
food anywhere? Yeah. Yeah. No, it is hard. I mean, I find some stuff because again, with the 800-gram challenge and stuff, I was pleasantly surprised. Chipotle you can do okay, even Taco Bell you can do okay with the veggie bowl and the chicken. So there are some options, but most of the time it's like Cinnabon after Cinnabon, and you're just sort of like, all right, can we just get something that resembles a Whole Food somewhere, please?
yeah, no, I love that, and I think like your message is easy to understand, but it's like deeply ingrained in science. So I appreciate like you coming on and you sharing all your stuff. And I'll be excited to keep seeing what you're posting on Instagram because I think it's both sciency but also really funny. And I love the whole
Mm.
protein thing you did last week because it was kind of like a duh, and I was like, oh, this is well made. So
Yeah, I mean,
yeah,
I just like to be clear to people that all the stuff I post is what I needed to hear 20 years ago, 15 years ago. So I'm not laughing at people. I'm right there in that boat.
well, thank you for coming on today. This was a wonderful discussion.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
I'll chat with you soon. I'll see
Okay,
you later. Bye.
take care.